What's up, guys? Cass here from GiveWave Studios, and on this one we're going to do something a little different, where it's not going to be a full tutorial breakdown, more like a walkthrough of how it is that I put together these Prowler boots, Uncle Aaron from Into the Spiderverse. All right, let's get it. All right, so as you can see here, this is the general breakdown of the 4 major parts that make up the shoe. This is just kind of like an insole piece, doesn't really count. So as you can see, the patterns are behind me here. All right, we're gonna put these aside. We're gonna start with the most complicated part, which would be the shoe itself. Now, it's not that bad if you're making this without planning on putting any electronics underneath it. This makes this a lot more complicated. You have to do a lot more planning in order to get this to work for you. But if you're just doing EVA foam, fairly simple. You're gonna have a pattern for your outsole thread. If you can cut this out in one long piece that just connects in the back, that'll be perfect, because you'll have like no seam anywhere else, just the back, and you can hide that with like a rivet or something like that. But that's like detailed stuff. So the main parts of this shoe are 2 of these, right? One on either side, okay? And make sure you flip your pattern left and right, especially if your foam has texture or something like that on the inside, okay? So these get connected to the back, okay, to each other, and then that gets put on top of your sole, okay, like so, and then the other one like so, following the curve. This is the front of the shoe. Now all of these little darts here are going to get connected to each other. That's what's going to give you this slight curve that you see here at the front of the toe. And it's okay if this is like pretty gunky or messy, because you will cover it with an extra strip of 2mm with also this detail that goes on top of that. So now that you have the front and the side of your shoe completed, you're going to use this piece here that's going to be your toe box, right? But on this one, you're going to cut this edge at a 45-degree angle, an inner bevel, which means that if you're looking at the surface, you don't see the bevel. It's when you flip it that you see the bevel on the inside. That is so that this can connect to this piece seamlessly, and obviously you'll need to do a little heating and bending to just kind of give it a slight curve so that it looks like a proper shoe toe box. Once that's done, you want to double up your sole. If you're not doing any lights, use 2 pieces of 10mm EVA foam for this. On the patterns, it's color coded so that you know what each piece is equivalent to in terms of thickness of foam. And with the sole, you want to use as dense and thick a foam as possible as you can, because as you wear these will bottom out. I don't know if you can tell, but you can see here it's much deeper in the forefoot than it is in the heel. That's because most of the pressure when you're walking is on your heel, so this flattens out a lot. Okay, I realize all those captions might have been a little bit confusing, so here is a bit of clarification. There are 3 layers of EVA foam if you're not using the lights, okay? 10mm on my caliper, give or take, okay? So here is your first 10mm, right? Right here is your second 10mm, and then right there is your third 10mm, all right? So when you're not using lights, you want to stack 3 of those on top of each other, all right? And then what that's going to do is it's going to automatically leave a gap here, right? Because these panels get connected to that 3rd layer, right? This 3rd layer is where this pink line ends here, right? These are flush with the sole, right? And that does that. These in particular, this piece, right, is only tall enough to reach right where this connects to the sole. Same thing with this. This lines up flush here. It ends up connecting right on the seam line here. So that's going to automatically leave this gap for you to either paint in pink or put some type of tape, whatever, right? If you're not using lights. If you are using lights, you're going to forego the last 10 millimeter layer. So you're going to have 2 pieces of EVA foam that will fit within this outsole detail. And then your last 2 pieces to complete your 30 millimeter are going to be 1 base layer of wood and 1 base layer of plastizote foam, both measuring 5 millimeters each. 5 and 5 is 10, 10 and 10 and 10 is 30. Okay, hope that made sense. Obviously, the hole, if you're doing lights, goes through all 3 pieces. Okay, the hole at the very bottom is slightly smaller so that your puck doesn't come out. The hole in the middle is exactly the size of the LED puck, and then the hole in your wood is also just big enough for the LED puck to fit through with like a little bit of pressure, so it's not like loose around. You'll notice, I don't know if you can see here, in the 4-foot hole, I made the hole in the wood a little bigger than it should have been, and you can see a little bit of red EVA foam there that I used to just kind of make sure that it doesn't move around on the underside of my foot. I hope all of that made sense. All right. And so once that's done, you have these detail pieces here that you're going to put. These are labeled in your patterns. Okay, so make sure that you follow which one is for left, which one is for right, and that's just going to get glued to flush to the outside of the side panels, okay, on both ends. Once you have that, you pretty much have the base of the shoe done, okay? After that, it's just adding details. So this is a toe cap detail that you can add to that. We mentioned the front plate panel before. You can add some rivets. You have these side panel details that you can add as well. There's an extra back panel that you can put to reinforce the heel. This gets glued here along the edges and then just glued to the back evenly. You'll notice that all of these have curves. So this curves follows the ankle curve of your main base shape. Okay, so just use that as your reference for gluing these pieces. And then obviously on the outer side here, there's an extra little piece. I put one on the outside, but I didn't put one on the inside. It's up to you. You can do both if you'd like to. And then finally, there's these 2 big discs that go on the inside of each ankle hole here. All right. And that is pretty much how this comes together, the simple way. The more complex way, the one that I have here with the LED lights, this actually lights up. I don't have any batteries in it right now, but instead of doing 3 pieces of 10 millimeter EVA foam, I did 2 pieces of EVA foam. And then the other 2 pieces on the inside, one is a balsa wood plate that I use, again, I use the same pattern as this, okay? And then I used another cutout with plastizote foam on top of the balsa wood. So those 2 5 millimeters gave me the 10 millimeters that would have been the other one if you're not doing lights, okay? So now with that done, obviously there are hole cutouts that I did to plug in some lights. I'll leave links in the description for where I got these on Amazon. They're just under cabinet lights. They have a remote, which is nice. So I don't have to, once I wear the shoes, I don't have to reach into them to turn them on. I can just press the remote, and those live in the pouch of the cosplay. And then I soldered my LED strip to a USB, and then I cut a channel inside of the plastizote with the LEDs facing out so that they light up the outer strip. As you can see, I have some polywave material here. So it's nice because it looks like it's lit up even when the light is not on. And that was my intent, is that if ever my light dies, I wanted to have whatever I line the outside with be something that looks like it could be luminous. And with that done, I used my pattern one more time and cut out an insole This is made out of plastic cardboard. That way, when I step into the shoe, I don't put too much pressure onto the batteries or anything like that that's on the inside. So I would slide that in. All right, and now I have a stable platform to put my shoe in. So this is not something that you wear on its own. This is meant for you to put a shoe inside of it. So like any type of like Skechers slip-ons or like Walmart shoe fits in here quite nicely, which makes it also a nice comfortable ride. Okay, and that is pretty much it for the shoe itself. As far as how the leg attaches to the shoe, so I have magnets here. Okay, and that's what I have as an anchor point for this. So you can see this has a little bit of mobility, so when I walk, it's not too like Frankenstein-y stiff. And you can make your own modifications if you'd like. If you want a little bit more mobility, you can probably cut a curve into these and allow your ankle to bend a little bit more forward, etc., etc. All right, so that's the base of this shoe. Now we can get into the leg part. So this is fairly simple. You have really two pieces that make this part up here. All right, so this is your pattern. Okay, you have your back, you have your front. This only connects in the back, so you only have to glue the back parts together. Okay, and then once you do, like I had here, kind of like a laser etched zipper, 2mm foam piece that I just put down to kind of cover the seam. You can do that with a 2mm strip without having to have any detail on it. There is a little bit of like a calf detail here. As you can see, I've beveled the edges, so it kind of give it a little bit of visual interest. On the original patterns, I have holes here because I intended to put like screws and bolts there. But because the bolts I was using were so big, it wouldn't have looked right, so I didn't end up going in that direction. But again, up to you the amount of detail that you want to put into this. You'll also notice that, again, I have the receiving magnets for the ankles here. Okay, I have a little bit of 2mm foam on the inside to just kind of protect the magnets from popping out. And I also have an elastic waistband that's connected on both parts of the ankle. This makes it so that when I step in, right, that this stays down and it doesn't rise up too much as I walk, right? So figure out, you know, how much slack you need for it to stay clamped down. You don't have to use magnets if you don't have access to them. You can also use like Chicago screws or any other type of rotating attachment that will allow mobility. Okay. So that's that for the leg. And then you have the shin part, which we have here as your base. Fairly simple. This is a detail that goes on top, like a 2 or 3mm detail that you can put on top once you've heat and formed this, right? To kind of get the shape that you need. And there is also this piece here, okay, that gets attached to the inside. And you will see a yellow line here on your pattern that shows you how deep you want to attach this. So this goes in here. This is to just kind of like hide the rest of your shoe, because just with this, there is a big gap here. So this kind of fills this void over your shoe. And if you're wearing like a black shoe on the inside, it might not be all that visible, but this is a shoe that I wear with it. It's blue with pattern, so I wanted to make sure that it was as hidden as possible. So that's why this is here. I have a little piece of carbon fiber tape here to add like visual interest, a couple of nuts and bolts, okay? And obviously this is curved. And again, I have magnets here to attach the plate to the front of the leg. And so slide that into place. Okay, everything snaps in place. Now, again, you don't have to use magnets. You can use like a clip system. You can use some Velcro. I'm sure you guys can find creative ways of being able to put this so that you can take it on or off. And actually, if this opening is big enough, you might just be able to just slide your foot in through and just glue this whole thing together and not have to worry about making the parts separate or anything like that. All right, so that is the shoe, that is the leg. Now let's move on to the final piece of the puzzle, which will be this piece here, which is the ankle strap. This has, again, magnets on the back side. I will have links for this in the description. These actually press on off, so I can access them since they're on the outside, but also they have a remote, so I can turn them on as well. I do have two separate remotes for the cosplay. Unfortunately, the size of the ones underneath and the style of this was very different than the ones that I needed for the side. These are nice and clean and rounded. These are more open, flat, with the individual LEDs much more visible, which I found was much cooler for like jet propulsions underneath the foot. In any case, you do have the pattern for this strip as well, which is this piece here. And you'll notice that here in your pattern, there'll be a yellow line here. But what you want to do, 5 millimeters on each side of that yellow line, you want to cut in at an angle to create this little triangular piece about halfway into your 10 millimeter foam. You don't want to do this too deep because you don't want this to be too thin and fragile. That's going to allow it to kind of fold this way. And then you also have the patterns for the base here and this part here that surrounds your LED puck. And you'll notice that on top, on the surface here, I have an outer bevel, which means a bevel that you can see on the surface to just kind of give it a little bit more visual interest. And I've glued another neodymium magnet to the back of this with a pass-through hole here that allows this to just snap into place like so, right? And with that, we have enough visual activity going on here that anything inside of the shoe gets hidden. And that's pretty much it for this build. Again, this is very not my usual style of tutorial, but there have been a lot of people that have reached out over the years and have wanted the patterns for this, and this was just one of those things that I wasn't going to remake. So this is the next best thing. I do have the patterns up on GiveWave Studios for free, so you guys can download this, make your own, modify, maybe do something that works for your cosplay that looks similar to this. A couple of other details that I'll go over with you guys. I did take these apart so that I could paint them. Okay, so I kind of wanted to have that kind of chameleon effect on some of the pieces. I included that on the outsole. His gauntlets have it too for my cosplay, but they're not here. And then as far as color, I did kind of like a dark gunmetal on the base of everything, and all of the extra bits like these plates here, the bolts, etc. I brushed on a very translucent silver on top of it to make it just ever so slightly lighter than the base color and make the differentiation between the panels. Here, I added some elastic so that when I put my foot in, it can kind of stretch. If you feel that you don't need this, you can also just create kind of like a pizza shaped piece, 2 millimeter, 3 millimeter, that you put underneath here and just glue the whole thing shut. But at the time, I believe I had made this with a larger shoe, so I needed that flexibility if I went from a thinner shoe to a larger one. And I also added some trim detail here underneath the ankle area. If I didn't mention it, also you have a pattern for this giant circle that you end up gluing to the inside of the heel opening here. And obviously, once you have all your parts made, that's when you're going to do some test fitting to make sure that, you know, the rotational point of the ankle is exactly where you want it to be. So in the patterns, everything is centered. That doesn't mean that it's going to work out for you personally. So take those things with a grain of salt and do your own testing, and then go for it and add your either magnets or Chicago screws, whatever you're going to use to make this rotate, and make sure that it fits you the way that it should. I think that is everything. If you guys have any questions, if you feel like I might have missed anything, please feel free to leave them in the comment section. I'll probably end up pinning the most asked questions so that if someone has that concern as well, they can see it at the top of the comments. But yeah, this was a bit of a different one for the channel. But if you guys enjoy this type of content, let me know. Obviously, it's much quicker than a full step-by-step tutorial, but it's also catered to people who have a lot more experience with EVA foam and builds, because I don't go over everything in minute detail. All right. So this has been Cass from GiveWave Studios. I hope this one was useful for you guys. I hope you guys learned something, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Cheers.